Hey guys, welcome back to another YouTube video, and in this video we're going to be covering how to endgame like Bugha and how he succeeds in a duo environment in the endgame. And we're actually going to look back because there's not a lot of content on YouTube about Bugha specifically that involves his communication, right? So the only solution that we really have, because obviously we could go in and compete tab and look in the game client and look for all these replays, but an important part of duo endgame is the communication, right? And Bugha obviously knows what he's doing. He's a very good IGL and he is very experienced at the game, and we want to learn like what is he thinking in the moment, and we can't get that from replays. So what I did think about doing is going back to Grand Royale, back when he did really well, won the entire tournament and made up basically 300k or something like that. And what was he focused on, right? What was he doing in the end game? Why did he succeed? And I think that's what we're going to be learning today. And I really want you guys to pay attention, focus up, write notes, the usual, and really enjoy this video because I think there's a lot of information to be learned here. So we're going back to Grand Royale. Obviously, this was trios, but there were certain situations where actually there were duo situations. I think there's two examples that I want to show you where Mero actually ended up dying. Nothing against him, obviously, but he just ended up not living through the end game for whatever reason. And Dukez and Bugha duo really well. They do a really good job of doing together. Even in a trio environment, they're able to pick each other up. And we can actually learn a lot of stuff from this VOD right here, where they end up as a duo, and we can apply this to this season, the next season, and FNCSs in the future. So let's take a look and really figure out what they're doing differently compared to the rest of us, right?
And we have 100 mats.
So this is just straight into the end game. I believe this is like second moving. Mero actually ends up dying to some reason. Actually, the reason's not that important, but one thing to understand, I'll turn on the comms a little bit, I'll turn it up when we need to, but the one thing to understand right away is they're really focused on staying together and just not splitting up doing nothing, right? So if Bugha needs to heal, Dukez also heals. It's important to be in sync in terms of like what you need to be doing. So for example, if Dukez doesn't need to heal, the only thing that he needs to do is just wait, right? Because if you're gonna do something and Bugha's not available to help you, it's just not worth doing, right? It's probably not going to work if you don't have two guns helping you in that endeavor. So really just make sure you're doing everything together and physically remain close to each other. And really, like 2 seconds left, if you notice the clock right here, right? If you notice the clock and you notice that like, hey, like there's only 2 seconds left, we should just wait for zone, because there's not much we can do in 2 seconds, because as soon as zone shows, we probably will have to start going in that direction, right? So we wait, zone pulls to the left. So they immediately, like, you almost look, I want you to notice this reaction, right? So this is very clear what they're doing in this situation. It pulled, like, I can tell you for a fact that Bugha's eyes right now are not on his screen. It's right here, right? And he's looking at this timer. He's really just trying to make sure that he understands what the timer is saying, right? And why is that important? Because it shows his priorities in the end game. It shows what he's focused on. And in this case, as soon as zone pulls it, this is literally like the frame that it pulls on. You can see that he instantly turns around and starts going in that direction. And why is this important? Because you have to understand, end game's like Snake, right? And if you've ever played the game Snake, you understand, like, if this is my Snake like this, right? And then I run into myself, then it's bad. Or I mean, a better example than this is like if you've ever watched the movie Tron, right? Tron is like the movie where there's like motorbikes, right? It's basically a multiplayer Snake where you literally drive your motorbike, and then there's like there's a line behind you, and you just need to live, because if you run into a line with your bike like this, then you lose, right? And the key thing for endgame, like why it's very similar to Snake and Tron, is that you just need to stay ahead, because then your tarp will block other people. But if you go in too late and you stagger too much, and then it's very difficult to find space, especially in the third moving like this, very difficult to find space. So it's very important that you understand that like staying ahead is an important detail here, right? So that's why they sort of prioritize looking at the timer instead of doing anything else during those last 2 seconds, right? Very important lesson. You can continue. And so why is Bugha interested in the bottom, right? So like he's literally commenting like we can drop right here. Why? It's very difficult to see, but if I show you back again, we can tell that this guy's a solo through like just audio cues. But more importantly, audio cues is kind of hard to tell in endgame. So more importantly, it's the visual, right? Pro players are very good at looking through builds, and this just comes from experience, and understanding what's going on the other end of that build. Okay, so it's very important to sort of get used to that and notice that it's an important detail and practice it, right? Actively try to look through builds and try to figure out like what's going on the other end, because we can tell. I just saw this person, like I'm sure you've seen it too. This guy was just right here and then moved back here, right? And we can see that through the builds. And if we continue, you can see that the enemy is literally just under Bugha right here, just here. Like that's where I saw, right? And it's hard, don't get me wrong, it's difficult to look through builds, but it is possible. And then there's a solo. You could sort of tell that the enemy's looking this way. It's not immediately clear, but it's kind of obvious. Just like I can barely see, I can't really point it out here, but through all the combinations of like snapshots that I see through that part, you can sort of tell that enemy's not looking up, right? And that means if the enemy's not looking up, they don't have good crosshair placement, they're not aware about what you're about to do, and even if they are aware, it's a 2v1. So it's a very nice impact. And guess what they need? They do need an impact, right? Look, they only have 7 builds. I imagine Dukez doesn't have that many builds either, otherwise they would have, you know, tarped ahead a little bit. But yeah, it's just a very easy kill here. The biggest point, he actually was looking up Peterbot and does shoot Bugha, but because it's a 2v1 and they're on each other at the exact same time, right? Because they're so close to each other and they're not looking for their own opportunities, it's very easy to go for stuff at that point. Okay, so they get the impact, get the siphon mats. Siphon mats is actually a big deal here, right? Because like everyone in this lobby is like basically out of mats, so any build becomes really valuable at that point. If everyone's lacking builds, then any like 5 builds is even crazy at that point. You can sort of tell. So now there's a guy behind, and we're gonna turn the comms up here because I want you to understand, like, this is urgent, right? He needs Dukez to turn around and look at him because this is a very important kill that's about to happen. Yeah, I dropped you off, right? And Bugha does not edit until he knows, right, Dukez is about to turn around. And I mean, he tries to do it, but he like, you can listen to his comms, okay? Because this is really important.
Behind you, Bugha, behind you.
There's a guy in this tarp.
Wait, behind. Yeah.
Right? He's paying attention to Dukez because he can notice like Dukez is not looking, right? And he wants Dukez to look because 2v1 is the biggest advantage you can have in the game. Past any peak that you guys make, right? You should absolutely abuse 2v1 if you have the opportunity to do so in duos. Like, that's one of the biggest advantages you can have.
100. I got it. Get my finish.
Right? It's very simple.
Okay, we gotta stay through. I don't have mats. It's all you. All right.
And then comms doesn't have mats. It's all Dukez, right? Because Dukez is looting, and Bugha knows he's out of mats. He, instead of running out and getting out of enemy builds and panicking, which is commonly like what most people do, they run out of their builds and then they panic. It's very common. Instead of doing that, he lets Dukez like grab the mats and tarp for him, right? Even tank storm, he doesn't just run out here, right? Because then you just die. It's not a good play.
It's all you.
Right? Like, you'd rather tank storm than to run out, like right here. And then very important, he doesn't go ahead because of the fact that he would rather Dukez lead because Dukez has the mats. And obviously they don't own a bunch of stuff like above and below them, but it's just like reality. They just can't. There's nothing you can do about it. Again, they're looking for stuff, but again, very important thing, they're doing it together. They're not looking at different things. They're looking at the same thing all the time. Don't pulls back again, right? So now they're lucky, like they're able to use their own tarp and they don't have to do much. I just saw someone in this build, right? So they're gonna look through that. Bugha's holding full charge at this point. The application this season would just be hold out your shotgun, right? You don't need to hold a full charge, just hold out the shotgun. And he's waiting for Dukez to break this build. You can see that Dukez is actually shooting this build, and then Bugha's gonna crosshair place, move over, crosshair place right here, because that's where the enemy is. You can see it, right? And then just be able to shoot almost pre-fire Dukez' build like that, right? And it's very easy to sort of get the kill at that point. But the biggest thing, like, what is the most applicable thing that we can copy from Bugha's gameplay is the fact that they're looking at the same thing together at the same time, and the physical distance between the two of them is minimized as much as possible. It's very important to do that. Everything else will sort of fall into place if you just do that aspect. Do not be in even different tiles. If you can, it's not an exaggeration, try your best to be in the same tile. The general rule of thumb that you can do. And you'll find a bunch of successes just by doing that, right? Because as you can see, as soon as Mero died, they weren't in a good position, but they're able to find 1 or 2 or 3 impacts just from the fact that they're doing stuff together. And other people, less experienced people in grand finals, would not be able to do this if they didn't remain together. So honestly, if there's one lesson that we can learn from this video, it's really to make sure that the literal physical distance between you and your teammate is minimized. The whole thing with you tarping and then them looking back tarp is just not a real thing. Shouldn't be. Like, even if there's like surge going on, honestly, you find more surge, more relevant surge, by going for plays together at the front tarp, and potentially like dropping kids down that are coming in after you because you stayed ahead, and doing it that way, right? Nowadays people know that you can steal tarps to isolate people and get impacts, right? So if you're split up in your tarp, it's not going to be a good time for you, and I really highly recommend against doing that in most cases, and try to default to sticking together. And while that is really obvious advice, I mean it to even further extent. Like, actually be in the same tile and look in the same directions and let someone lead. Like in this case, Bugha let Dukez lead the play. He's just holding his pump out, and that's what you should do, right? You should honestly just follow your tarper. And you notice how I said this, like in a previous video, I said that tarper is like flexible, and Dukez tarped in this video, right? like Bugha is main tarp, but Dukez is like tarping afterwards. And if you watch my IGL video 2 days ago, you'll see exactly what I mean. But either way, guys, again, main advice of this video, very short VOD review, but very important one. Stick together with your duo, try it in the cash cup, and go for plays together. Right? Do not do stuff alone. I promise you, it will not work in the long term. It may work on bad players, but that's not the goal that we want. We want to be able to beat good players as well with our strategies. And the one strategy that does work is staying together and finding the biggest advantage in the game for duos. It's just 2v1s. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.